stay of the emperor.
Is that a risk that you see happening in Bonaire? That Bonaireans are living in
Look around.
And
Look around.
That the switch is
Look at
happening.
the populace of Bonaire, how it's going, how fast it's going. Compare the amount of social houses or houses for the common, compare the amount of houses built for people who are dependent on the local financial economy compared to the ones for outside of Bonaire. It shows you even the construction is based on building for people who don't live here yet or who are not even planning to live here ever.
Or for a long time,
The question is
that what you want?
One, and look, development is development, but is all development progress? So if we continue this way, for whom? Oh well, okay. For me, progress, I measure progress in how the populace that is living here benefits, how they get along.
So because we've come on this issue and we talked about the population. The population, as when you were a young boy, it was about 8,000 something.
9,000.
9,000. And it's 24,000 now.
Yeah.
Right? So
it became 16,000. It was 9,000. It was at one point it was a little bit higher also, right? But it was 9,000, then it became 16,000 in 2006.
And then it dropped down a bit.
No, 2006 it became 16,000.
And then it
was 16 was a little bit higher before, dropped down a little bit. And I think in the 1980 was, I don't remember how many, it was a little bit higher. It dropped down because economic, and then it came back.
And then it's gone to 24 now. So
24, 25. Yeah.
So nearly 3 times what it used to be 1.5 generations ago. Where do you see? You laugh. Where do you see this going? Where would you like to see? Where is your party?
First question. Guys, just imagine this. Imagine 9,000 to 16. 80% population growth.
And it wasn't because Bonaireans were having more children.
No, not that much.
Yeah, go for the Yopi, but
not that much. No,
even Yopi couldn't.
They wouldn't be able to keep up. But that would be, in 7 years, 80% growth.
Correct.
So just imagine
if this was
because some people say, you can never stop it because look at Holland. Listen. In Holland with 17 million. When 400,000
Ukrainians or
Syrians come,
your political system just goes, all sorts of parties show up saying, hey, we're losing our
identity, whatever. We're talking about percentages.
Not 100%.
Exactly. What is that? 3% population. So you got an influx of 3%. We have an influx of 80. You just disrupted the whole community.
Yeah.
But my problem is, look, I have no issues with migration.
Yeah.
Why not?
Everybody.
Son of a migrant. Everybody is. We're all important. The original people in Bonaire, when the Spanish found it, at the end of the day, the Dutch exported them.
Yeah.
No, the Spanish exported them to Hispaniola. The ones you find on Bonaire, with traces of Indian race.
The North
yes.
They're
from North America.
Exactly. Who were kicked out.
Stuyvesant had an issue with one tribe who just didn't want to follow his rules. He got them and sent them to North Salinas. So we got native North Americans walking around on Bonaire.
Yeah.
So let's go back. Nothing against migration, but any society who has an influx drastically like that, even in the
alters the very
what did the States do in, I think it was the beginning of the 20th century, end of 19th century? They put quotas. They said, okay, we cannot stop migrations, but they looked at the populace they had and they based quotas on the population types they had. So out of Ireland, so much percent out of why they tried to create, to operate at least
some sense
of
cohesion or stability. So what would the policy position be for the Democratic Party on this issue?
First of all, let's go back to why. How are we helping anybody if we have an open door and we don't have housing for them? We don't have place for school for their children. Our infrastructure cannot handle it. So we're not helping the migrant with nothing.
And the people here.
And we're not helping the people here with nothing.
And the hospital not with anything.
We're not helping anybody. The only person who can benefit from this is somebody who is not even thinking of being part of this community.
Just profiting.
Just passing. Because when it becomes really bad,
gone.
They'll just get in the plane and leave anyway. And this is one of my other issues with it. I have no problem either with economic migration, because everybody's trying. My great grandfather was an economic migrant also, social, religious, but also economic. No problem with that, because it helps. What I do have a problem with, if you're in a community where you have all benefits, you move here, already in your mind for temporary. You come for your practicals. You're not charging the salary because mom and pop is actually, it's like a prolonged vacation. $600 you're getting a month. But you're competing for a job place that somebody has to feed their family.
Correct.
That person has to pay a house, feed their family, get a car with that same type of job.
And not mom and dad subsidizing.
When things go wrong because COVID hits in or whatever and the place closed down, you just get on a plane. You go to Holland, or you lost your job and you go back to Holland.
And
you get an understand. You get all these benefits that the one you're competing with doesn't even have. They don't have the benefits of the housing system, not the public transport, not the understand, not the pension, nothing. Explain to me, how is that just? It's unfair competition. It's like just we have in free market. If one country is subsidizing their industry, the other country is going to close the border for them. Say wait, because
unfair
subsidies. Because you're creating an unfair market price for something that
but Clark, your critics will say you're going to stop the growth. You're going to stop the music that has been playing so well. Look at all that's coming, and look at all that's possibly coming, and with additional investment.
Growth for who?
Everybody's benefiting.
No. I asked you a question. Growth for who?
Yeah.
The question is this. The question, yes, completely. That I know that argument is coming. On paper, if we bring measures, what you're going to see is, on paper, you're going to see that the economy is going to slow. 100%. Guaranteed. Why? Because right now we have an inflated speculative market. Okay, a question.
Yeah, construction is one of our most important sectors. Tourism is the other. All these
what happened in 2000? What happened in 2008?
Done.
What happened? Crash.
Financial crash. Yeah. Everything.
3 months before that, they would have said the same thing. But construction is going so good. Yes, you're over ledgering on speculation. You are creating a crash. So if we do not regulate and fix this now on time, we're going to get an unregulated crash. And it is going to come spiraling down. Because the market prices right now is fictitious.
Unreasonable.
Housing, it's fictitious. It's nonsense. It's speculation. You're gonna get the 2008 crash that Bonaire survived because we were out of it, because we have it.
Yeah.
If you have, and we're working straight to it right now. And what happens when it happens here? Then we're gonna have a problem. But if we regulate it now and take the heat off of it. Because the question is this: what do we benefit to have all this construction but nobody local can get a house?
So let me ask you, and we'll jump to a couple of high-profile projects and get your view on them. So, for example, one argument is that, look, there's a lot of congestion in Kralendijk. There's a lot of pressure on Kralendijk, and we're given all the people that are coming and the number of people that are expected to come and the growth in the population, we need to move some of this out of Klondike and into other areas of the island, in particular Bolivia.
Yeah, I like how you introduced it. Before we go to that, I'll go to that. Before we go there, what I want to say is
the argument is that it actually, if anything, you said that you should anticipate stuff. So the Minister of Housing and Planning stood along with the State Secretary of BOPEC, stood on the lands of Bolivia and said, look,
you need to
plan ahead.
There's agreement in 2000.
You're preventing the planning ahead.
No, the contrary. There's an agreement in 2010 where the Dutch government, together with the Bonairean government, decided, literally, and I'll try to translate, I'm paraphrasing in this sense, unbridled, I think the word is, unbridled growth of Bonaire, the populace of Bonaire, is against the culture, nature, and the desired development of Bonaire. The Dutch government shall support the Bonairean government in all ways to avoid this point. Agreement on paper. So the Dutch government
is obligated?
Agrees.
Legally obligated.
Agrees that it's an undesired development. So how is the Dutch government saying, yeah, it's inevitable? No, it's not inevitable. Because why isn't it happening to any of the islands in the north of Holland? Because you get good policies on it. Look. We should stop the population growth, or at least manage the population growth. This is getting absurd. This is absurd already. It's not getting. It is absurd. 1, 2. The question before that you had that our policies are going to stop the economy, slow the economy. No. Let me put it this way. Yes, that extreme, unrealistic, hyper growth. Yes, but what we're going to do, we're going to diverge the economy. So instead of having housing built for externals, we want to start with 5 main projects to create housing housing on Bonaire for locals. Why? Basic economics. Look, I'm not an economy geek, but I did follow a couple of classes, and my first class I always heard demand. What is it? Vraag en aanbod. Aanbod is supply and demand. So, just imagine how we're doing it now. The government gives land to individuals. So 100 individuals get a piece of property, but you have 200 construction companies, 20 construction companies. So if 100 people want to build a house, but 20 companies who can build it. So the demand from houses built is higher than the supply. What happens to the price? Who is in the bargaining position, in the negotiation position to decide the price? The construction company, right? So now let's say we're not giving 111 land anymore. That same 100 property, we're splitting it into 5 project developers or 4. Each gets 25 lots to build houses. We'll even put criteria why the government is supplying the land. We'll put criteria, 30%, 40% has to be in this price bracket for this group, or 70%, even 30% you can make your profit on. So now suddenly there's 4 projects developers, but there's 20 construction companies. What happens with the price?
You change the economics of it.
You change the economics of it. You turn it completely way around. So, but the question is, what does our community need? Does our community at this moment need? So you have to choose. We're gonna build 10 houses. We can choose. What are we gonna build? We're gonna build rental spaces for short term. We're gonna build houses for the expat that's gonna come to work at the hospital. Or we're gonna build houses for the people who already live here that they can pay with the salary that they're getting. Which should be our priority? If you ask us, the last one. People who live here should be able to pay a decent house at a reasonable rate. Our target is it should not cost more than 30% of your income to get a decent house. So what I'm saying when I say decent house, the quality should not be different based on your income. Quality is quality.
Size may vary.
Size may vary, but even that, if you have 4 children, I'm gonna put you in a studio apartment, and it's not rocket science. You can make a house on Bonaire with 4 bedrooms, but the bedrooms are going to be 3 by 3, no, but it's 4 bedrooms for under $100,000. You can, if you get the square meter price down to $1,000 per square meter, $1,200. Now it's on $1,500, $1,750. How do you do that? So now we come back to the whole question you asked. Congestion. Okay. So let's say I have 10 families that I have to house, right? In Bonaire, what must have been the practice? Everybody gets 400 square meters, 500, 600. You build a single family house, and then 400, 600, single family house, 400, 600, single family house, etc. Nice. So for me to get those, we said 10 families? 10 families. I will need a street. Let's say that it's 500 by 500. So it's what? Let's say it's 10 meters wide and 25 deep, or 20 by 400. 20 by 20. Am I 400 then? I'm bad in those kind of calculations. So 10 by 10 is 100. 20 by 20 is 400, I believe. Well, 20 by 20. So I would need a street of 100 meters. Both side houses. Yeah. Both side houses to get those 10 families in. Because everybody has their own lot, 400. Imagine what's bigger. I have to place the piping, 100 meters of piping for all of them to get water. 100 meters of cables for all of them to get water. 100 meters of pavement for all of them to get access to the public road. 10 families, all those expenses. Imagine if we take one lot of 40 by 20 and you made an apartment block, 2 floors. That one apartment block already could take these 5 families, and the other side of the road, another block, these 5. So now you have the same investment, but only for 40 meters for the same amount of people you're supplying. What happens at the end of the day with the total investment and the overhead of maintaining a community? So the way we're going, we cannot use the same tools and methods we did in the past if we want to lower price of housing. If, even worse, when we had those 100 meters, just for those 10 families, let's extrapolate it now. Extrapolate it. Those 10, for 100 meters, 10 families. Let's say we want to talk about 100 families. Right away it became a kilometer, right? So for 100 families, it became a kilometer. If I have public transport, in that kilometer, the bus has to stop 4 times because you want everybody to be around 250 meters for public transport to be interesting for them to do. 4 times on 1 kilometer to get 100 families. Now, if we go back to what we said in 40 meters, we already got the 10. So if for 400 meters, I have the 100 families. So actually the bus stops what? Twice? Actually 1.5 even, you could say, because if you extrapolate. So we are in a situation where we have to adapt, and I'm not saying everybody let's go live in apartment blocks, but it cannot be that apartment blocks are not an option and not something that we're, why? When I came back, I'm a single guy, no kids.
Happily, it
give me a unit, less to clean, less to maintain.
Lock it up and I go to church for the weekend.
And I can pay $250 a month because I'm sharing all the overhead to make it possible with everybody. Hence, it costs me less. In such a construction, doing it differently, and I'm using the example of an apartment block, but it can also be smaller lots, 2 under one roof, or smaller blocks, or duplexes. Everywhere in the world, you see them, they're putting, so mix it up. To come at the argument without you having done none of that we need a third
center of the
nucleus in Bolivia.
Doesn't make sense to you.
No. I spoke with Mr. Brainmark like 5 times. Spoke with him recently, a week ago. He knows our position. And I told him, every time I said, listen, we are not, we don't want development there. If you ask us, I would make the whole thing a park. I would even be able to say, okay, let's make 95% and 5%. We'll see if we can do something that is low impact, let's say ecotourism, whatever, all that. If you really want to build social housing, the project you presented now has nothing to do with social housing. Why? Because if you say that the houses start above the NAG, we know that's not social housing. So if you really want to build social houses, we'll do that model. The government of Bonaire, if we would decide, we would say, no problem, we'll give you 200 lots.
Somewhere else.
Somewhere else.
If you want to do social housing.
Somewhere else. Out of those 260, you can make villas and sell them. Make 140 social houses for the people of Bonaire to get access to it. I'll do that deal tomorrow.
So I got your view on that. There are a couple of other big things on the island that one of them is sort of stuck because, not because of ourselves, but because of circumstances that are around us, which has to do with BOPEC.
Yeah.
BOPEC is stuck because of course, Venezuela imploded because of sanctions and other issues. PDVSA had issues. Some of that is getting unlocked a little bit because of...
Why are you using so many words? Geopolitics.
Because of geopolitics. That happened, and that geopolitics is shifting again because of things that are happening, right? So, where are you on BOPEC? What is this major piece of property that is sitting there? What does it look like in the next 10 years?
We passed the reason why the Democratic Party was founded, but BOPEC is one of the things that the Democratic Party brought. The reason why we brought BOPEC here was actually a Dutch company in the beginning, and then PDVSA bought it. The funny thing is, I don't know if people understand what the necessity of BOPEC is. Not so much for Bonaire, but what BOPEC's role is in the world.
Sure.
It's not only BOPEC. In Curacao also you have the refinery.
That's right.
That's a little bit of history on that. In 1917, roundabout, the refinery in Curacao opened, Shell refinery. Shell was the first company to be in Venezuelan oil.
Yeah.
Shell was the first one to be there, had the biggest contract. The refinery in Curacao at that time was the most advanced and the biggest refinery in the world.
That's right. And the oil fields that are in Venezuela are the largest in the world, even more than in the legendary oil fields of Saudi Arabia.
The largest proven oil fields. The only thing is the Venezuelan oil is a little bit heavier and tougher, so you have to process it a little bit more. But Venezuela is on a continental plate of Latin America. So what they do, they have feeder ships going to the Boqui Maracaibo, where most of the oil fields are in that area. They can carry half a million barrels of oil. They transport them then to Curacao, for example, back in the day when refinery works, for them to refine them. Or they brought them to BOPEC, and BOPEC is a transshipment location. Yeah. So those ships of 500,000 barrels come here, and then the Mambo tankers, the big ships, continental ships, come that can carry 2 million barrels, come pick up and bring them to China.
Mostly
bring them to Rotterdam, because Rotterdam also has a refinery. Okay, so that is why, because Bonaire has very ideally 50 meters out of coast. You can go any depth you want. You can any size ship you can have. So, and the location, it's on the inside. The geopolitical situation, Holland was normally always neutral in geopolitics stuff. So back in that day, Democrat brought that company, and government brought the company there. Why? Because it was also located to Rincon. And it's just like the Cargill situation, the salt company situation. These were one of the main suppliers of middle-class income jobs, and you didn't have to have any education for it. It was
basically
you got skilled in company.
Yeah.
So you could they could pick you off the streets,
start you up,
and train you, and 2 or 3 years, 4 years, you'll have above median income of Bonaire standards. Pillars, economical pillars of the island. So after government, actually, in Bonaire, a lot of people would prefer to work for BOPEC and salt company than to work for the government. So it was the banking, government, and I'm talking about also the teachers and everything. Those were the economic pillars, very, very, very big. So why did BOPEC close? Geopolitics. The States and Holland, they wanted to show a little bit who's boss, the whole situation with Venezuela. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it was an argument of some things that Venezuela confiscated. But it's funny because it's certain American companies who are doing this. But what I find funny about is Venezuela has huge assets in the States. They didn't confiscate none of those. Because Venezuela, PDVSA, is owner of Citgo. Citgo, which is one of the biggest gasoline station conglomerates in the States. So after the oil is refined, they're sold. Why didn't they because that's what happened in Bonaire. BOPEC has been confiscated slash because in arbitration, Venezuela confiscated certain assets of certain American companies, and the American companies started a court case in Holland, where the mother company who owned BOPEC is registered to get the assets back, and they got the assets in a couple of barrels of oil that was in there, but also in the installations here, which they're liquidating theoretically. But why didn't they confiscate what PDVSA has in the States? Imagine it would confiscate access to gasoline in the States, and hence oil prices will go up. What would happen with the Dutch government, with the American government? You have a big problem. So again, Bonaire is the one suffering because all these jobs were lost.
So what would you, if the geopolitics are changing again, and what would you like to see happen if you could at BOPEC?
If you would ask me back in that day, well, look.
What now? What about now? Would you like BOPEC to go back to being the old BOPEC of the good times?
I'm a very practical person, let's not throw the shoe away until you have a new one. Because I know some people have plans, let's do this there, let's do that there. Before you dismantle all the tanks in there, we're talking in 20 years you can do something, because it's going to cost a lot of money just to get rid of everything there's there. So you have to make a whole 15, 20 years, then something new will be there, even if you decide today. Or you need a multi-billionaire who just want to throw money at it, because it's going to cost a couple of tens of millions just to get rid of what is there.
But even to reuse it as a transshipment location, you would have to spend money.
True, but who's the owner? The point is this.
But who is the owner?
Exactly. Strict formally still PDVSA, but it's in liquidation. PDVSA is still owner.
Until when is the contract with PDVSA?
No, it's not contract.
They have
PDVSA, and that's the whole thing.
Perpetual.
In Curacao, PDVSA was renting Bilibay and renting the refinery. Here, they're owner of the tank. So that's why there was always the crown jewel for PDVSA.
In the land?
The land is of the government of Bonaire. But the law is erfpacht. But the law of Bonaire states, because we have Dutch law, imagine property law. Imagine we would say as a government, you want to take away. We have to compensate the owner for all the assets he has on it.
But is there a land? Is there a time on the land that you have?
Yes, but even if the time on the long lease expires, if we take it back as the government of Bonaire, we will have to compensate for what's on it. So we'll have to pay PDVSA for the installations.
Does PDVSA owe any money to the government of Bonaire?
Not at all.
Outstanding, no.
Not at all.
Because if you did, then you could always, of course.
But the point is this. Okay. If we would do everything perfect right now, will the world be non-dependent of oil in the coming 20 years?
No, that's so there's this conversation in the world about moving from fossil fuels to alternatives, and that is not happening by any imagination overnight. I mean, we're talking about a period.
20, 30. Okay.
Yeah, what?
So what do you need to finance that transition? Capital, right?
Sure.
So we're not going to do any economic activity right now, but how are we going to finance the transition then? The point is, let's be realistic.
Yeah.
You mentioned yourself, it's the biggest proven oil reserve
in the world.
In the world.
Yeah.
The only way he can get that oil out economically is by having deep sea transshipment locations.
Yeah.
He cannot use Aruba because Aruba is also on the continental shelf. The closest place he has is Bonaire. He cannot use Margarita either because Margarita is also sandbanking. Curacao and Bonaire. Question. Less than 5-6 years ago, Holland, being a little bit also pushed and supported by the States, adamant that BOPEC had to leave. And then Russia and Ukraine war started. And now they have a shortage of oil. So they didn't care that 40 families lost all their income. Solve it. But now they have a political problem. Political, nothing else. Political, economical. And then suddenly you want to negotiate again? And then suddenly it's an option that PDVSA can open? So for me, what it shows is the government in The Hague gives a damn about what the impact is on us based on the policies they take. The moment something hurts them, then all their principles disappear. Because the only reason they did this was principle, right? It's
well, we spoke about geopolitics.
Yeah.
So it's the principle of geopolitics is
the interest of
the geopolitical.
Their interest.
Yeah.
The question is at the end of the day.
But foreign policy of Bonaire or the islands is not in the islands' hands anyways, right?
No.
No,
formally not. But, and this is the whole thing we had in 2015. And this was the whole idea. Okay, imagine this whole situation that the government of Bonaire could buy those installations. And it's not PDVSA owns them. And they can rent and use it.
Yeah.
Because then also we take a little bit of geopolitics out of it.
Partially.
Simply because now they put a mercy beslag on it. If we own it, you cannot put beslag on it. Because they tried to boycott Venezuela, but they didn't try to boycott it because they didn't stop. That's the funny thing, eh? Holland didn't stop use of Venezuelan oil.
It's just that PDVSA could not benefit from that sale.
Because they just sold some of the even.
Yeah, which is Venezuelan oil.
Citgo still runs on Venezuelan oil. They just limited their
what money can go back to
exactly, and the mode of operation. But now suddenly, because of geopolitics, it's the question is how. One of the things we wanted to get to, and it's not only
you meaning we as a
party in government in 2015, and that started more with the situation of gasoline. If the government can have influence, so in the whole thing of energy, okay, let me put it this way. If another entity controls your access to energy, what does that mean?
They control you?
So we have oil trading Bonaire. What did Holland do recently? They put beslag on BOPEC, and Holland in The Hague opens BBT, Bonaire brandstof terminals, Bonaire fuel terminals.
Yeah.
What? Huh? What? What interests do they have? Or did they saw a lucrative business
down the road
that they wanted to get in for themselves? So now, The Hague decides, because mind you, terminals, what is BOPEC? An oil transfer. So, mind you, The Hague creates policy to stop BOPEC. puts pressure on the local government to close their own Bonaire OTB, oil trading Bonaire, but themselves create a Bonaire fuel terminal, but in The Hague, which who they decide who is in the board and the policies they are. The only thing that's Bonairean in it is the name in it. There's nothing Bonairean about it. There's not a Bonairean working for it. There's nobody in Bonaire. It's not even registered in Bonaire as a company. It's a Dutch company using our name.
But this was done because you couldn't run it well here. The reason was because the Bonairean officials.
Who's you? Name them by name. Who's you? We negotiated back in the time. You had a regio plan. We made a plan. Was 2016 with the whole gas supply issue. We noticed that it's a supply chain issue, right? Because the companies were sending the empty tanks to Curaçao to fill them up. They didn't have enough tanks, so they had to ship them back. So we made literally, it was, can you imagine that the problem we had for 20 years took literally one meeting and an MOU to, in general terms, now it's slacking a little bit, I find again, but in general terms, simply saying, yeah, we can get gas from other places. I said, okay, but what's your market price? Yeah, no, we need the monopoly that that specific company has, Cargill has. I said, but Cargill doesn't have a legal monopoly. Cargill has a factual monopoly. Yeah. No, they have monopoly. I said, no, they don't have a legal monopoly. What people mistake is there's an old agreement between Bonaire, Curaçao, Cargill, and PDVSA that states that only Cargill can sell the products produced in the refinery in Curaçao. That's the agreement they have. Yeah. The monopoly they have is that they're the sole representative of products produced in the refinery in Curaçao. That's it.
Somebody else wants to...
If you want to bring something from Trinidad, Aruba, or wherever,
you're welcome.
You're more than welcome. Question is, can you offer the same price?
Economics won't work.
And why cannot I offer the same price? Gas, in this terms, was a byproduct of the processing Curaçao. So it was something they would throw away. So actually, it's a service they're giving for it. The logistics of it, the cost, the charging is just to cover the logistics. And it was the kind of social contract you had with PDVSA with the refinery
to do
and all the consequences. So, long story short, the conclusion came in the MOU that Cargill would put a filling station here. And what they would do, they would put 3 tanks, large tanks, high volume tanks. So there would always be, one is filling, one is on the way, while one is here. You know, is to always have
sustainable.
So the moment one arrives, there's a full one, then this finished. The other one is already filling, but then it's on its way, and then so you always have a cycle. So you will never have those storages again, and actually you would have a backup for it, because what happens sometimes the refinery will go down, and you don't have production, but you would always have a backup here of. We made an MOU, and they would solve the problems. Short term also, they got more tanks. They did solve it. And I remember that was in 2015. I was commissioner, and we went on Christmas break, and I was in Curaçao with my family, and I got a call that we had a gas problem again. I remember back in that day, commissioner at the office, and we were conversing on the phone, and with another team afterwards. When we came back, we were thinking, okay, how can we solve this? Because we were trying to solve that problem at that time. So we were like, okay, let's call the Aruban gas company, Arugas. Okay, so logistics. What would Arugas, imagine they would do it. And they would say, but it was going to cost much more. Maybe the government can subsidize it to keep the price. People need gas. How are we going to solve it? That was the question. Okay, Uragas would have to put tanks on a big ship, send it to Bonaire. Okay, who's going to drive around and bring the tanks? Okay, we can maybe arrange it. Okay, but who's going to pick them back up? Okay, we have to send the tanks back to... Okay, we came to the conclusion...
It just doesn't work.
Exactly. The only way we work is if we would take the oil trading Bonaire, which we owned, and they would be owner of storage tanks for oil derivatives. gas, gasoline, diesel, kerosene. Why? Because we would have, for example, if you have 4 tanks for gas, I could have 4 providers. We own it, the infrastructure. Nobody has an infrastructural monopoly, so we're not dependent on anybody for the infrastructural monopoly. If Adnan tomorrow can get gas at a better price or gasoline at a better price, you're more than welcome. Import it, you can rent storage, same price as everybody does. Even we could create a little bit, with this small economy, a little bit of competition on the market. So that's the conclusion we came to. We need to go that direction. Okay, came back, made a decision. That's what we're going to do. We're going to invest in oil trading, fix up the management, clean it up. That's why the oil research came, that all the stuff that was going on bad at oil trading. We would consolidate the tanks, take away what crude oil has at ATO. We would, okay, it could be that crude oil would still be
the one who provides stuff.
One of the ones who provides, but we would have one consolidated tank farm, also for airlines. So in one of the bids that we did for money that were coming free from Holland, the government fell in the meantime. But in one of the bids, it was called Regio Envelope. I think it was in 2017, 18. We started in 2017. One of the bids was that we were getting 20 million requesting from in that bid for us to get, out of which 10 million would go to finance that farm. We would get another couple of million, put it in it, start making the investments to create, to make us energy independent. Because it's not only doing that fuel, but also investing in long-term energy plans of sustainable energy. You know what was used to fund the creation of BBT? That money. So Holland
took the same money,
took the money that was supposed for Bonaire and decided to create that.
So
and they want to compete with what BOPEC is doing. So if you ask me on the short term, if BOPEC can open tomorrow and people can get jobs, do it. If you ask me, it would be even if you want to make that kind of farm. If the government of Bonaire buys all of them out, the Dutch government and the Venezuelan government and the PDVSA, and it's a Bonairean, you can even still have Venezuela operated or PDVSA operated, whoever operated. Because we should never get ourselves in this kind of situation again. Because if you get this, for example, that you have this issue, they can—
you don't control your future.
40 families lost their jobs for geopolitics. And literally a year and a half later, you want to be down there and kissing the same government that you used as an argument that why does the reason, and now suddenly because you have an economic issue, where are suddenly all your principles? Where are they? You made sure that 40 families lost their jobs based on principles, and now suddenly 40 actually extra, because a lot of construction, 200 families used to eat at least out of PDVSA, out of BOPEC. So we should be less dependent of geopolitics. And in these years, I'm noticing that geopolitics is going much further than I saw it happen before. For example, with the whole war in Ukraine, I saw things that was never possible in my imagination in international law, because I saw states target individuals. I saw the European Union and the United States target specific individuals, expropriating properties, etc. That would be a no-go 10 years ago. You're not allowed. You would never target individuals. You always attend with states and state dignitaries and state officials. Targeting individuals goes very far. So imagine, that can go very far, my friend. So if any state in this world at a certain point deems you or anybody, for whatever reason, associated with another state that they deem an enemy, they could literally take everything away from you. It's a weird world we're getting.
There's a slippery slope on that.